Today we're talking about a topic that I am scared to death to talk about. Woohoo!
I'm super excited to talk about it.
We are talking about taking your dating offline, out into the wild, out into the real world, and the thought of like talking to actual people starts to make me break out into hives. So this is just about itching. Right? This is just as much for me as it is for everybody else. That nice practice of getting better, ever since like the whole pandemic, it feels like it's gotten harder to know how to go out in the real world and talk to and meet and get to know new people. But today we want to break that down because this is not necessarily to the exclusion of online dating. Taking your dating offline is a really great way to supplement your dating. It's not an either or, it's a both and situation. You can still do the online dating, but don't discount the probability that maybe you've already run into somebody who would be a good fit for you. You just didn't know because you were so focused on only one kind of aspect of how to date and how to meet people.
I want to, yes, all of that, both and. But I want to go back to what you said about the topic that terrifies you and kind of makes you break out into hives. Most people probably do feel that way. And that means that your chances, if you step out of your comfort zone and you go put yourself out into those public situations and take your dating offline, you are going to have a much higher probability of success than so many other people because you are doing what other people are scared of. So the more scared you are of it, the more I just want to reach out and say, embrace it, embrace the suck and love every minute of it and treat it as a challenge and a new opportunity and have fun.
Because apparently this is the one thing that you can't just order off of Amazon, put in all the little ticks that you want and have them delivered straight to you. You have to actually venture outside of the house and into the world.
So let's talk about where to meet these people. And I'm going to start by saying everywhere. Everywhere. It doesn't matter. You can meet them in the grocery store line. You can meet them at church. You could meet somebody in a bar. I wouldn't recommend that if you want a serious relationship, but you could totally do it. You can meet somebody going out and taking a dance lesson. You could meet somebody by going to a business networking event. You can meet people everywhere because the world is full of people and they are everywhere.
I would also say, don't discount telling your family and friends. This is one of those things that feels like it's really obvious, but I think sometimes people don't know that maybe you're looking to meet somebody nice. And who knows you better than those nearest and dearest to you? Maybe they can kind of pre-vet some of these people, but yeah, tell those people in your life, say, hey, I'm looking to meet somebody nice. Do you know anybody?
And don't be afraid to be awkward. Right? When you are building a new muscle or when you are trying a new skill, you're going to suck at it. That's okay. I'm telling you, I'm giving you permission. Lisa's giving you permission. I'm speaking for her. I probably shouldn't, but I am. We're giving you permission to go out and be awkward. It's okay if you are awkward when you first start. You can't get better if you don't practice. You can study all you want, but if you don't practice, you are never going to get better. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get, the easier it's going to be. And pretty soon those dates are just going to be falling in your lap.
We talked about this briefly in our episode about banter and flirting. And I think if you haven't gone back to listen to that episode, I believe it was episode 5, go back and listen to that one because that's going to be some good information to take with you as you go out there. But a lot of what we talked about is embracing that awkwardness of, if you're nervous about something, just kind of let it lead with that, let them know that, sometimes coming up and coming off all cocky and just like, yeah, nothing scares me. Sometimes that works, but I think sometimes it's a little bit more endearing to come up and be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this, but hi, just put your hand out there and just, like you said, falling face first into that awkwardness and just letting it see where it goes.
Right. Just put a smile on your face and give it a shot. And as overwhelming and as scary as that is, know that we want to hear your stories. So tell us what your experience is. But if you want to narrow that down a little bit more and you want to have a better chance at a successful match when you are starting to talk to someone offline, here are just a few places that maybe you could go to meet that right person. And the first is take a look at what do you enjoy doing? What are your hobbies and where do you spend your time? And if you don't have any, go out and try some new things and develop some.
Yes. Most of us, I think, have that like list of things that we've wanted to try. And I think that's a great way to do that. Look up local clubs in your town, because I'm still in the process of trying to figure out if I'm going to do this or not. But because I started running again, I actually started looking for like running clubs. So finding that hobby, looking to see if there are like clubs specifically around it. Again, that's not always approaching it as a way to meet like a new date, but approaching it as a way to meet new people, because you never know who you're going to meet who might introduce you to somebody else. Because sometimes, again, there's this thought that if you go in with the blinders of, I have to do this thing because I want to meet a man, I want to meet my next date, I want to do that, I think we kind of discount going in for the experience and building other relationships from that. So yes, while that can be one goal, is to meet somebody to date, don't let it go in and being like, you have to be laser focused on finding somebody that you can date and hook up with or whatever it is. Approaching it in a way that maybe allows you to enjoy the experience and connect and communicate with some new people.
Exactly. And there are so many things out there. You could do a cooking club or a cooking class. You could do some dance classes, or you can go join a gym and take some exercise, either classes or just hang out at the gym if that's the type of person that you want to run into. You can look for outdoor activities. We have a lot of different places for that. We have community classes where you can go take some classes and be part of a network of community. If you like to travel, go join some language groups and learn a foreign language, something like that. So there's just a few ideas if you don't have any hobbies or don't know what you're into, of places that you can go hang out that is going to put you in immediate proximity of people that you have something in common with. Go to sporting events and talk to the people that are sitting in the chairs next to you. When you're at a restaurant, talk to your waiter or wait staff, which is really good practice just for having those conversations, because they're there and you know their name and they have to talk to you. I mean, and they're going to be nice to you because they want you to tip them at the end. So it's a really good spot to practice some of that banter, just because they're kind of locked into it and can't do much about it as long as you're being nice to them.
Well, and I think this idea of like trying new things and building new hobbies is a great way for you to build an interesting life without this idea of like, I'm only doing this because I'm trying to meet this type of a person. Use this as a way to just kind of be more interesting, give you more things to talk about, more things that you enjoy trying. And it's one of those things, you get busy building a life and maybe you put out this vibe, this attractiveness, and all of a sudden you're going to run into the person that you were supposed to meet. So let it be about building a more fulfilling life and knowing that it could be a really good part of a nice byproduct of trying all of these new things.
Yes, for sure. And think about that. I really like that point, is be interesting. So there's two sides of that, right? First, you want to be interested. The way to approach somebody and the way to have that conversation and to engage with somebody is to be interested. Be interested in who they are, be interested in what they're doing. But the flip side of that is be interesting. So have your own stories to share, have your own things to talk about so that you can have a conversation back and forth where you are both contributing and both parties are interested. So be interested and be interesting.
Right. Which I then kind of thinks gives you a way to approach people, because you have stuff to talk about now. You have these things, especially if you're at like a class or an event or something like that. You're like, oh, well, I've tried this a couple of times. It makes it that much easier when I want to approach somebody to start a conversation. I would hope, right?
I like to try new things. I like to try new things a lot. If somebody puts a challenge in front of me, I'm going to say, yeah, let's go do it once. I may not do it again. I may not like it. I may not be good at it, but I like to try new things. And I find that that experience in my life was outside of my comfort zone at one point in time and is now very much inside the sphere of my comfort zone because my comfort zone has expanded, but it always gives me something to talk about or a way to relate to the other person so that I can understand their perspective and where they're coming from. But it also gives me a little bit of something to fall back on and contribute to a conversation as well. So there's a good give and take. And that way I'm not demanding information from the other person continuously without being able to give them something to build up a little bit of that trust factor.
Right. So what would you say is the best way if you see somebody out and about to approach them without necessarily coming off as like weird and creepy? What's any kind of suggestions that you might want to throw out to people out there?
Well, one of the things, it depends on where you're at. So there was one point in time we watched the Winter Olympics and what do they call it? Where this sounds really bad because I don't remember the sport, but they're on the ice and they go slide the thing across the ice. And I know the name of the sport.
Oh, curling?
There you go. Curling. And we have a curling club here and they were offering a try it night, right? So let's take that as an example. When I'm there, you're going out and you're trying it. You're there by yourself, surrounded by a whole bunch of other people who are just trying it, walking up and asking somebody if they're having a good time, asking somebody if they've done it before, asking somebody if you see that they've done something awesome, making it a point to go out of your way and point it out and say, wow, that was really good. How did you learn to do that? Something like that is that just that little bit of a conversation starter that you can use. And from there, you can kind of grow on it and you can get interested in the other person. You can get interested in what makes them good at it, what they're trying to do, why they're there, what they're doing. And that conversation can flow naturally. And sometimes there is that spark and that connection, which will naturally lead to the, hey, we should try this again together.
Okay. My brain is just like, yeah, that sounds really nice in theory. The thought of like being out in public and wanting to do that. I'm like, I have to give myself credit. I've come leaps and bounds from where, I was like even 5 years ago, my ability to talk to new people when I don't know the situation and being comfortable being out and by myself. What about bringing like friends with you to stuff like that? Is there any kind of like benefit to having that wing person helping you?
Whatever makes the situation easier for you. Now, I will say, let's say that as a female, I bring all of my friends with me. All of a sudden, I am in a group of people and I am unapproachable. So I need to take the initiative to go be the person approaching it. Now, there's other ways to do it too. Again, if you are in a situation where you're both doing something together, finding a way to complement, or in any situation, looking for the good and focusing on the other person can take some of that nervousness away from yourself too. We get nervous when we're focused inward and we're focused on ourselves. But if we're out in a public situation, you look for the good things about the people that are around you and hand out compliments like candy. That's what I would say. Hand out compliments like candy. And if you're constantly looking for the good thing in the person behind the register and the person behind you in line, the person sitting next to you at church, the person that you're walking across the street with, if you're constantly looking for those good things where you can hand out a compliment, those compliments can lead to conversations as well. Now, sometimes it just leads to a thank you and they move on. And sometimes that leads to a second question. You just tell them that you like their shoes and they say, oh, thank you. You say, where did you get them? And that can open the door for a conversation as well. So starting small and not even really having to go through that fear of engaging in a conversation to have a longer conversation. Start small and work your way up to it. Again, practice is going to make you more confident in it. and it's going to make you feel better about it. And I always say, start with compliments and hand them out like candy. I don't know that I always say hand them out like candy, but I'm going to now.
Well, you just kind of talking about this and had this thought come to my brain. We're like, don't be afraid to be a regular somewhere. I think if you want to practice, like giving out compliments like that, then find maybe a local coffee shop or a little sandwich place or someplace where you could be consistently, not like necessarily every day, but maybe you stop somewhere and get coffee every day, or you stop somewhere and get a treat after work. But maybe finding those places where you can be a regular. You never know who maybe else is a regular there. You can start to build some conversations there, but they start to see your face, they start to recognize you, and it might be easier to start finding those ways to stretch that conversation muscle because they start to become more of a safe place out in the world for you to practice that.
And it's okay if you don't get comfortable with it overnight. This isn't a do it once and you are an expert at it. This is something that takes time and a muscle that can be built slowly, but know that you have opportunities every time you leave your house to practice. And take those opportunities, even if it's somebody you're not interested in, even if it's somebody you're not attracted to, even if it's somebody that you would never date. If you take those opportunities to practice having conversations with strangers, it becomes easier and easier. And that way, when you see that really hot guy or that really, really hot girl that's across the street and you want to go introduce yourself, it's a lot easier to walk up and say, hey, you know what? Your coat's really awesome. And I really like that. Or, hey, you look like you could use a hand with your bags. Can I help you? Can I help you carry your groceries? Or whatever the situation might be, wherever you're doing it. Or you could be dancing and it could be, hey, I don't have a dance partner. Would you be my partner? Approaching people that you don't know with those types of conversations becomes a lot easier if you practice on a regular basis with people that you have no intention of ever dating and people that you may not have any intention of ever running into, seeing, or talking to again.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because that I think takes a lot of the pressure off of having verbal diarrhea when you come across the person that you really do find attractive. And I think only having it in your head that these conversations are only valuable and worthwhile if it's hopefully with this end product of getting a date or because you find them attractive or for whatever reason. I think there's this idea, if you want to really build that muscle and have a natural flow of conversation, it needs to be with that guy you're standing at the corner with, or that gal you're standing at the corner with while you're waiting for the crosswalk to change. It's, the person who's changing your oil and you're just kind of sitting there chatting. I mean, that's a couple of things that have come up recently where I'm like, had my oil change sitting in the car, just chatting with the technician there. So it's all of those little things where yeah, it's not going anywhere. But again, it's all of those little practices of using that muscle so that when you come across somebody that you are attracted to, somebody that you want to or hope that there's potential for that, it doesn't come across as quite so stilted. You've had that practice. It's a little bit more fluid, and hopefully you don't come off as a creep because you've practiced having conversations with strangers.
Exactly. But don't let that scare you away because quite honestly, you might. I know somebody, he is an older gentleman, and we will not name names or how I know them or why, but he was talking to me and he said that he used to talk to women in the gym. And he said, I didn't mean anything by it. I was just making conversation. But now I realize it made me creepy. And now I don't do that. But as far as getting out there, socializing, trying to relate to people in this situation, he put himself out there, he gave it a shot, and he learned what not to do. And that is just as important as learning what to do. It's not a failure. It is a learning opportunity. So, nobody wants to seem creepy or weird or be in those awkward conversations. But if you don't allow them to happen, you're not going to learn. So it's okay. Give yourself permission to just try it.
Well, and it's about reading the signs, right? If you see somebody with obvious headphones on and they're looking at their computer or they're doing something, like, yeah, that's not the best time to walk up to them and tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, what you doing? If you're sitting on the train and they're not, maybe don't have headphones in, and you see a book that looks interesting, then yeah, maybe saying, hey, I've heard somebody else talk about it. What do you think about that? But it's about learning to read those social cues where you're like, if it seems obvious, they've got sunglasses on, headphones in, their heads down, they're whatever they're doing, it's pretty obvious that they're like, please just leave me alone. Everybody in the world, leave me alone. Not any one person in particular. It's learning to read people who are maybe open to a conversation and not, like you said, being a creep and kind of forcing your way into a conversation just because you happen to think that other person seems nice.
Right. And we didn't talk about it, but that's another great place to practice those conversation skills. Airplanes, if you're traveling, the person sitting next to you on the airplane, the person sitting next to you at the airport, the person sitting next to you on the bus or on the train or wherever that is, those are great places to practice those conversation skills that we didn't even touch on.
So really, it's all around you, right? The world is your oyster here.
It is. You leave the house, you have an opportunity to practice. The more you practice, the better you get. The better you get, the less intimidating it will be when there is somebody that you actually want to connect with. And remember, it's not about, again, flip the script. We talked about how to focus on them, and it's not about you internally. But then think about it when somebody is nice to you, when somebody gives you a compliment, when somebody comes up to you and gives you a smile and says something nice to you, or engages with you about the beautiful weather outside or about the crappy weather outside, or has a conversation and goes out of their way, does that lift your spirits? Does that make your day? Does that make you feel better? And it's not intimidating when you are the one on the other end of that conversation engaging. Sometimes it can be annoying if you want to leave the conversation and they won't stop talking, but that's okay. Again, giving yourself permission to fall forward, but understanding that it lifts your spirits. That's what you're doing for somebody else. If it makes you feel good, it's going to make somebody else feel good when you do it.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you for for destigmatizing a little bit of trying to take this offline and get out in the world and meet new people with the hope of meeting new people. And I think expectations, again, we want to kind of temper, not saying that you can't meet the love of your life doing this, but I think not necessarily always approaching it with the idea that I have to get a date out of every interaction that I have. No, we're using this as a practice to get to talk to people. It can be a wonderful byproduct of having these conversations. But I think sometimes we set ourselves up for failure in a way that might hurt our chances to want to keep doing this if we expect that every interaction should end with some sort of like date or something like that.
Right. So this conversation we talked about, we started by saying that we're taking dating offline. But this topic really isn't about dating. This topic is about improving our social skills, and improving our social skills leads to more opportunities to date because we have more opportunities to have conversations. So as long as we are leaving this as it opens doors in our lives for dating, for friendships, for new activities, for new hobbies, for new interests, for new perspectives, for new information, for new knowledge. As long as you are going into it with whatever it's going to bring me, it's going to bring me, but this is a skill that I am going to get better at for myself. You can't go wrong, and there is no way to lose.
What a wonderful way to wrap that up in a nice little bow.
Yes. So let us know how your offline conversations go, how it goes meeting new people. Let us know if you run into any stumbling blocks and if there's anything else that we can do to help you along your way. And our email address will be in the show notes as always. And we look forward to talking to you next week.